It's not a far reach to say that the video games we know and love today would not be possible had it not been for the significant influence that the Star Wars film franchise bestowed upon popular culture. With the original film trilogy being recognized for groundbreaking technical achievements and special effects wizardry, it just made sense that when it came time to make an arcade video game for the Star Wars franchise, that the game creators would attempt to do the very same. After spending 2 years struggling to develop a game called Warp Speed, initially intended to be a 3D imagined space game, Atari decided that it needed to go in a different direction. So in the summer of 1982, they partnered with Lucasfilm to begin converting their Warp Speed prototype into a Star Wars-themed video game capable of capitalizing on the success of the film, as well as the recent arcade boom. This partnership yielded an Atari Star Wars game that we see here today. Gameplay revolves around a 3D flight simulator in which you take control of a flight yoke to navigate your spaceship in efforts to destroy the Death Star. During development of the game, Atari found it rather difficult to integrate specific scenes from the movie into the game. Rather than delay production further, they ultimately chose to narrow the game's focus on the finale of destroying the Death Star. Piloting the X-Wing, of course, is Luke Skywalker, and you'll hear authentic sound clips from the movie from both Luke and other characters in the film as you play through the game. These iconic voices and gameplay sounds come to you via the dual speakers nestled away underneath the marquee of this cabinet. The dual speakers and the all-new adjustable volume slider are just some of the many new improvements and features that these new releases from Arcade1Up are featuring as standard. Adorned atop this wonderful cabinet is the included, fully lit arcade marquee. This marquee looks absolutely wonderful and really gives this cabinet a much more polished look to go hand in hand with this striking design. You should also take notice of this cabinet's unique silhouette and side panel shape, as it's the first of its kind from Arcade1Up. They have faithfully recreated the original cabinet shape from the original full-size Atari cabinet. It's a rather significant attention to detail that I'm sure that'll help win over some of these die-hard arcade purists still left out there. This cabinet also features an all-new settings menu, one for each specific game is included. Should you wish to make any changes to the game, simply click on the respective gear icon underneath each game's title to open up that new menu. You can modify settings such as your number of shields, gameplay difficulty, and vector glow, among other options. Shown here are some of the varying degrees of difference when making such changes to the vector glow strength settings. Return of the Jedi also has some unique menu options as well, one of which is something a lot of fans have been asking for, and that is the inclusion of a scanline generator. Here in the gameplay menu, you can toggle the scanline effect on or off for your gameplay experience should you wish. Myself personally, I'll keep my setting turned off because I'm just really not a fan of it, but it's neat to see this option available for others that do prefer this look. Often seen in the Arcade1Up forums last year was an overwhelming amount of comments and stern-worded disbelief that Arcade1Up would never manage to acquire the licensing rights to release such a cabinet as this. Fortunately for us consumers, they were able to use the Force and land a deal on one of the most absolutely recognizable brand IPs in the world today. I was there front and center at E3 this summer when this cabinet was unveiled to the public for the first time. Being an uber Star Wars nerd myself, I knew just how significant this announcement was, not only for Arcade1Up, but for home arcades in general. The original full-size Atari Star Wars cabinets are extremely sought after in today's marketplace, oftentimes demanding extremely large investment prices. Now that Arcade1Up has created this 3/4 scale version of this iconic machine, many fans are dying to know if the end result would live up to their expectations. I'm happy to say that this cabinet satisfies my admiration of the full-size original counterpart, and does so with flying colors. And speaking of colors, I absolutely love this blue-colored cabinet trim along the sides here. It really makes this cabinet pop and stand out from the rest. And of course, we also have the beautiful arcade faithful recreation of the iconic Darth Vader and X-Wing artwork along the sides. This cabinet also comes bundled with a custom graphic riser as well, showcasing some of the awesome TIE fighters on the sides, as well as a great looking blue front plate with the Atari Star Wars logo. It should also be noted that this included riser is actually slightly taller than previous Arcade1Up risers have been in the past. This was a necessity to bring this flight yoke up to a more arcade-accurate control height, and of course we need to take some special time to talk about this flight yoke. If there was anything that was going to make or break this cabinet in the eyes of fans, it absolutely was going to be how this yoke felt and played. I was truly delighted the moment I turned this machine on and took control of this flight yoke for the first time. I found it to be extremely responsive and well calibrated right out of the box. While there are no accessible system settings menus to calibrate this controller further, I was pleased enough with how it performed and didn't find myself wishing to fine-tune it any further. The control feels sturdy and well built, and quite frankly I'm blown away with the quality and performance and feel of this, at this price point especially. Most third-party recreations of the Atari Star Wars flight yoke cost several $100s just in themselves alone, so to see this being offered bundled up with this cabinet from Arcade1Up at such a reasonable price is really impressive. So let's just go ahead and cut to the chase. Is this worth your hard-earned money? And mind you, it's a lot of hard-earned money because this is the most expensive Arcade1Up cabinet sans the cocktail cabinet. So this comes at a retail price at $499. Obviously, it is a special cabinet with that flight yoke. It doesn't have the prototypical joystick and buttons, so that flight yoke is going to cost you an extra little bit of premium. It's got a light-up marquee, it's got a riser, it's got graphics, it's got Star Wars licensing. So yeah, you got to factor in all those when you get the price. But in my personal opinion, it's absolutely worth every penny. And that's not just coming from a biased Star Wars fan, that's coming from a fan of arcade games. And quite frankly, Arcade1Up knocked this one out of the park. And let's go ahead and talk about the flight yoke, because that's what everyone is concerned about and that's what everyone wants to know. Is it good? I'm here to say it absolutely is. Now, while it is constructed of majority 90% plastic, there's metal parts in there as far as holding it together, but predominantly it is all made of plastic. The plastic does feel sturdy though. I've got, grown man hands. I didn't feel like I was going to break it just by squeezing it or anything like that. As far as use, I think it's durable for most adults. If you've got a lot of younger kids, I definitely probably don't recommend having them on this unsupervised. While I do think it's sturdy enough for a long time, prolonged use, just having a child hang on it I think would be problematic. We'll say that I felt like it was secure enough to where I could actually almost pick up the cabinet by the flight yoke. Didn't actually want to try that myself because I didn't want to break it, but it did feel secure enough to where that was almost in the realm of possibilities. So take that for whatever it's worth. As far as how it plays and how it controls, like I mentioned earlier, the calibration felt spot on. I didn't feel like there was any weak or dead spots. It steers very smoothly. I didn't feel it was herky-jerky or anything. I felt it very accurate as far as where I was pointing my crosshairs. Where I steered, it went, so that was great. And overall, I gotta say, I'm impressed with the triggers and the thumb buttons. They felt accurate, responsive, and they were a little bit clickier than I expected, having been, somewhat used to the new Arcade1Up buttons where they're a lot more mushy and soft with the micro switches. These are a little more responsive, have a little more tactile feel, so A+ there. I really am impressed with this flight yoke, especially at this price point. Gameplay on all three games was exceptionally well, everything I remember from childhood, with one exception. I did notice on Star Wars and Empire Strikes Back that there's this weird gray screen flashing effect once you get hit or you take on damage. Definitely something I don't remember in the original arcade, and I'm fairly certain that it didn't exist back then. Not a deal breaker by any means, but it's something that it'll take a little bit to get used to because you're staring at a black screen and all of a sudden you'll get a gray flash. But other than that, the game's played great. Return of the Jedi, especially if you've never played that one, which a lot of people probably haven't because it wasn't very prevalent in arcades, but that one plays similar to almost Battletoads where you've got a lot of side-to-side and quick, fast-paced action. That one will definitely get your heart rate moving, and it'll definitely break up the monotony of Star Wars and Empire Strikes Back if you're no expert on those games. And to wrap everything up, if you're a Star Wars fan and an arcade fan, I highly recommend you picking up this. It's worth every penny in my opinion. Definitely check it out. I'll put product links down in the video description box below in case you want to try to order this, or if you want to play that waiting game, I definitely don't recommend it because with Star Wars' new movie coming out and this being a hot ticket Christmas item expectedly, well, supply and demand is probably going to bite you in the butt, and this may be harder to find than you actually expect. So definitely don't sleep on it. Go out and get one, or order one today if you're looking to get one. I highly recommend it. And as always, thank you for watching, guys. I appreciate it. If you're new to this channel, please consider subscribing. Make sure you hit that notification bell so you'll be the first to know every time I upload new content. And as always, thanks for watching, guys.